Greetings, humans. Welcome to the Black Pill. It's been a while. Let's talk about the existentialism of Star Trek. It has been said that Star Trek: The Original Series is a bit of a Freudian psychodrama. There's a way to really understand it as that. Spock, Kirk, and McCoy form a single mind. They're not just the best of intergalactic friends. They're one person. Spock is the super ego, right? He's constrained by logic, by the demands of society, the needs of the many versus the needs of the one, kind of stuff. By the rules. McCoy is all passion and empathy, and Kirk decides between the viewpoints these other people, these same guy offers him, and he is therefore the ego. There's the whole genre of literature about this, you know. He can beat Spock at chess. Kirk can beat Spock at chess. He does so by making moves that are irrational, which in context become rational. It's rational to make the irrational move, right? He can out-argue computers and make them blow up in confusion, right? His own passions, usually described in relationships with green women, are of course legendary and far outstrip Dr. McCoy. We could go on in this vein for a while, but I would like to switch systems. Let's leave analysis behind and dive into existential psychology and psychotherapy. So after graduate school, when I was able to watch television again, getting into the old episodes, especially of Star Trek: Next Generation, I started to realize that a bunch of stuff that I thought I learned about existential psychology in graduate school, in fact, I had first learned already watching Star Trek. So let's have a look at some stuff. Kirk and the Kobayashi Maru test. The Kobayashi Maru being a simulation in the simulation world that is Star Trek. The Wrath of Khan opens with a simulation in which Saavik, played by Kirstie Alley at the time, Saavik is Spock's protege. She's going to be the next Vulcan science officer. Enterprise is out doing training missions at this time, and Saavik fails this test of character that is the Kobayashi Maru. She fails first to recognize that it is a test of character, not of command ability or technical skill or battle readiness. Right? That's her first failure. Why would you test for character and not for all these other? All right, but the Kobayashi Maru is an unbeatable simulation. The commander of a starship is ambushed by superior forces while attempting a rescue in the neutral zone, and the neutral zone being a three-way buffer between the Federation, the glorious Klingon Empire, Qapla', and the Romulans. And there's no way to win the resulting conflict. Now Admiral Kirk walks through the set after the simulated disaster, and Saavik asks him for notes, and he demurs, right? Prayer, Mr. Saavik. Klingons don't take prisoners. But she pushes the issue. She gets an answer that Kirk ultimately doesn't think she's ready for, that she doesn't want to hear, and that isn't necessarily his place to say, right? Spock is the captain of the Enterprise, and this is his training mission and his student and his protege, and it's not really incumbent on Admiral Kirk to make any kind of waves here whatsoever. So here's a conversation between Saavik and Kirk on the turbo lift. The doors are closing. She sneaks in. He can't get away, And Saavik goes, "Permission to speak freely, sir." Kirk, "Granted." Saavik, "I do not believe this was a fair test of my command abilities." Kirk. And why not? Saavik. Because there was no way to win. Kirk. A no-win situation is a possibility every commander may face. Has that never occurred to you? Saavik. No, sir, it has not. Kirk. And how we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life, wouldn't you say? Saavik. As I indicated, Admiral, that thought had not occurred to me. Kirk. Well, now you have something new to think about. Carry on. Later, though, it's revealed that Kirk himself cheated on this test, man. He never faced the no-win scenario. He, in fact, does not believe in the no-win scenario. His character arc in this particular film, his character arc is to face it. To face death. The ultimate no-win scenario. Spoilers for a 43-year-old film, I suppose. But if you haven't seen Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan by now, I mean, I suppose you're just really not planning on doing so. Khan sneak attacks the Enterprise, crippling the ship, bloodying the bridge crew. The ship is on a training mission. It's full of cadets, many of whom die in the attack, including Mr. Scott's nephew, is it? His nephew dies in the attack. He stayed at his post when the trainees ran. Right? It's just heartbreaking event. And Khan presents the survivors with this ultimatum. Give me the MacGuffin, the Genesis device. Give me the MacGuffin, or the rest of the crew gets it. Right? I blow up the ship. Apparently defeated and with no alternatives, Kirk finds a way to cheat death. That's what he does. That's his command style. Audacity, non-linear thinking. There. And the trick is Khan has stolen a Federation ship, and Federation ships share computer logic, and so you can transmit a code and deactivate the other ship's shields. You can sort of, you can remote in, your computer's not working and tech support remotes in. You can sort of remote in 80s style. You can remote in and take down their shields. Audacity and nonlinear thinking. Later, literally nonlinear thinking. Later, in a nebula that confounds sensors, flying mostly blind, Spock deduces Khan is intelligent but inexperienced. Right? He sticks to two-dimensional space. Khan sticks to two-dimensional space. Hugging the galactic plane, as it were, and they beat him again by adding by acknowledging the existence of this third dimension and attacking Khan's ship from above, whatever above means, absent a strong gravitational influence, from the plane of the Reliant. It's whatever. But in the end, the Enterprise is stuck next to this ticking time bomb that Khan defeated, his crew dead, his bridge smashed, activates the Genesis device and taunts Kirk and the Enterprise over the comm systems with like Moby Dick quotes, right? From hell's heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. Right? A really good Moby Dick stuff. And the MacGuffin's gonna kill everybody. The ship is badly damaged, unable to get out of range, and there's Khan surrounded by his own dead, taunting over the comm system. No escape. It's Spock. It's Spock who finds a way to cheat. He absorbs a lethal dose of radiation, repairing the warp core. Nobody could order the crew in there, and he nerve pinches Bones to get around him to do what has to be done, right? And Dr. McCoy's like, no human can withstand that radiation, and Spock is like, As you've observed, Doctor, I am not human. But he's half human, and he still can't absorb the dose of radiation that's in there. He can absorb enough of it to put the MacGuffin, this different MacGuffin, back together, right? And then suddenly there's warp drive, and the Enterprise warps away just in time as the nebula collapses into this Genesis wave. In a sense, Spock is cheating. He's cheating the rules. He's cheating the narrative of film. He's cheating the don't kill the dog formula recipe book for scripts. The Enterprise escapes because he disregarded his own safety, let himself die. In another sense, though, Spock is showing how to win the no-win scenario. Do what you're supposed to do. Face up to the situation. Face death. Die. Die well. Sell yourself dearly and not for cheap. When the time comes, the job of the captain is to show the crew how to die bravely. The captain goes down with the ship. The band plays on, not frivolously, not ignorantly, but calmly and with no fear of the rising water, not denying death, but living in the face of death, in the face of inevitable fate. Kirk has really shown up. Kirk has really shown up by this incident. In the whole script, Kirk is really shown up again and again and again. He couldn't do it. He could never stand in the breach and die. Spock did it for him. Spock died for him. Showed him the way. Cheated the no-win scenario by not cheating. Living by a principle, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And in the final analysis, ultimately, neither could Spock really go through with it. He put his his soul, his spirit energy into McCoy, mind meld, into McCoy, setting the scene for his later resurrection in Star Trek III. Not that great a movie, but it does have Christopher Lloyd respawning on Vulcan, right? In the next movie. A cheat, man. A cheat. There you go. Asterisk in my notes, asterisk. A MacGuffin's a plot device, some literal object of contention that spurs characters to action and conflict. So like the Falcon statue in the Maltese Falcon, that kind of thing. All right, next one. Kirk won't give up his pain to Sybok. In the worst Star Trek movie until Section 31, Kirk meets and outsmarts God himself. There you go. What happened was, famously at this point, Nimoy got to direct an episode. That was Star Trek IV, Voyage Home. That's why it's so weird and goofy in the genre of Star Trek movies. It's like it's almost like Galaxy Quest. Is this even a Star Trek movie? And the fans agree that it is, but is it? Because there's almost no violence at all. It's almost pure character development. It's character driven. It has an ecological message. They're saving whales and stuff, and it's absolutely a fan favorite. I love it. The Star Trek movie ranking is probably Star Trek II, Star Trek IV, Star Trek the Motion Picture, and then all the other Star Trek films, like that. But because Nimoy got to direct a Star Trek picture, the Paramount was contractually obligated to let Shatner, see where this is going, direct a Star Trek picture. and Shatner's really into Shatner. Nobody loves William Shatner like William Shatner, man. Kirk was a great captain, and all. The prototype against which all other Starship captains, Star Trek captains would forever be measured. Flawed, a product of the times for sure. Budgetary constraints that kept putting people in World War II uniforms, yes. And with some real meat on the bones, worth serious contemplation. In The Final Frontier, Spock has a surprise half brother. You know what's going on in the 80s is there's Dallas on TV and Who Shot JR and that whole sort of mystery thing. And there's everyone has to be related to someone. The surprise twist is someone's related to someone. It's Star Wars. It's The Empire Strikes Back, right? No, I am your father. Again, spoilers for stuff that happened in the early 1980s. Yeah, so there's that. So Spock has the surprise half-brother, Sybok. Sybok is this Vulcan radical and enigmatic cult leader who embraces emotion and uses his telepathic powers both to comfort and dominate other sentient beings. Dominate through comfort. Ooh, tricksy. He's on a quest to find God. And he thinks that if you could get into galactic central core, this sort of area of space that it's been impossible until this point to map or even see clearly, if you could get there, like all the every alien race has, every sentient species has some legend that's where God lives, you know. So Sybok rides up on people, literally in the introduction, rides up on people, gets telepathically into their minds and invites them to give him their pain, right? Share your pain, brother, and gain strength from the sharing. Like that. They think of the thing that weighs on their conscience, usually, and he takes it from them. It isn't clear how, like, a hypnotic suggestion to forget the whole thing might be the most likely. There's a longer discussion about how therapy works that we could do. Maybe I'll do another day. But he does this late in the film. He does this to McCoy, and Bones recalls his father's death through physician-assisted suicide. Man, that was a topic. When this film came out, we weren't really having public discourse about physician-assisted suicide yet. Jack Kevorkian really enters the news cycle in 1990, you know. David McCoy, Bones' dad, asks Leonard McCoy to let him die as he has this incurable disease which is also intolerable. The pain is just intolerable. And Bones acceded to that demand. But a cure for the disease was found quite shortly thereafter. The death, to Bones, the death seems pointless. And Bones suffers this tremendous guilt over the, what he thinks of as a patricide, really. A session with Sybok, though, cures Bones of the pain, of the guilt. Sybok moves on to Spock and shows him his own birth, shows Spock his own birth, and the immediate rejection from his father. So human, you know. Spock just stares at the scene, no obvious revelation taking place there, and then Kirk. And Kirk just rejects the whole enterprise. You know, he goes, moo. Just reject the whole premise of the thing. All right? And Kirk, I mean, I'll read you his thing. I won't do a William Shatner impersonation here. You're welcome. But here's his whole speech. I know what my weaknesses are. I don't need this con man to take me on a tour of them. Bones, you're a doctor. You know that pain and guilt can't be taken away with the wave of a magic wand. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain. And he could have said, I am my pain. He could have said, I am my pain. Right? My quite narrow approach to existential psychotherapy that probably very few people actually share is you literally are your emotions. You're as much your emotions as you are the thoughts that you have in words. And when we try not to have an emotion, that's an act of self-aggression, right? You're anxious and you tried not to be anxious, but you don't have anxiety. It's not beamed into you from space. You are anxiety and you are anxious because you have some beliefs or expectations or values, and that anxiety is serving a purpose, and it is you. You are it. And when you try not to be anxious, you're aggressing against the self that is anxious. So I cannot and should not, I'm checking the time here. Oh, that's probably a doomed enterprise, as it were. No, I have plenty of time. Good. Yeah, so like doing away with your guilt and shame would be doing away with yourself. Once you do that, you're not really there anymore. Okay? Then Spock re-enters the scene, and he explains to Sybok that his human ancestry and rejection from the Vulcan culture, and from his father, that he loves and reveres, those things hurt him. But Sybok left a long time ago, and he's not up to date. He's not up to date with his brother Spock and how he's doing. So on the Enterprise, with his friends, Spock knows who he is and where he belongs. He's found himself. After this, even Bones declines to follow Sybok, though he really wants to. You know, he's a puppy, and he has a new master. But his loyalty to his friends is stronger than this passionate puppy impulse to follow this newcomer. Existential psychology does not attempt to relieve people of their pain. It does not devalue the experiences that forged us, though they be uncomfortable, tragic, even intolerable. There are many experiences I wish sometimes I could forget. Being assaulted as a child, hurting people because I lacked empathy enough to think about what I was saying, to know how my actions and words would impact other people, to consider their experience. Moving so much as a child, losing everything and everyone over and over and over again. But I've arrived at a place, I've made a self, where I can feel mostly good. I can feel mostly good about me, about being me. I'm okay. I'm okay with who I am. I realize all that pain and loss made me this person. This more careful, empathetic, passionate person, capable of grief, capable of crying when I think about my father's funeral. And so I love these experiences. I don't enjoy them, but I love these experiences. My doctor tries to give me antidepressants every time I see her, and I refuse. I don't pop on the Beck depression inventory because my neurotransmitters are out of whack. I pop on the Beck depression inventory because they're in whack. Because we live in this world of tragedy, grief, rage, division, futility. Who can want to just be happy in these circumstances? Next, Guinan. It is repulsive to fit in. So we're talking Hollow Pursuit, Star Trek Next Generation, and this is the episode that introduces fan favorite Reginald Barclay. Socially inept, pretty average compared to the high-performing superhumans and aliens and androids of the bridge crew. He's awkward, anxious, stressed out. He's kind of just a regular dude in a high performer environment, right? There's a joke that goes around sometimes. I forget who started it. That when we're having the Olympics, we should have just an ordinary person there, like for scale, yeah. So the women's 100-meter sprint, there should be just a regular schlub you dragged off his couch from New Jersey and you put him in that race, because these women are all running about as fast as each other, just to show how extraordinary it is to run 100 meters in 10.2 seconds. So Barclay evolves over the course of a few guest spots, but in the beginning he's quite difficult actually to relate to. He's behind on his work. Well, I mean, that's just like the rest of us. Yeah? I should be over there grading papers, dude. I'm doing this instead, you know? He's behind on his work. He's surrounded by these superstars who can absolutely do no wrong. But he also makes AI-generated fictions of them on the holodeck. It's a family show, so it's small stuff, literally small stuff, like making Riker, played by the imposing 6'4" Jonathan Frakes, making a sort of short version of him that Barclay can beat up in the simulated 10 forward, you know? Making Deanna Troi romantically interested in himself. Brain says she was still kind of a space cheerleader in this episode, but check me on that, you know. But you can see, it's a family-friendly show, but you can see how this could very easily go in a non-PG, non-TV appropriate direction, right? But he's interrupted ultimately. He's interrupted in these pursuits. The crew find out how he's portraying them in his fantasy life, and they're appropriately grossed out by this, right? Troi thinks it's fine until she sees her own hologram, you know. Troi is the ship's counselor, and she tries to teach Barclay ways to cope with his anxiety. He's so uncomfortable around her that he flees each session in distress. And even Troi, the empath, is totally inept with Reginald Barclay. She doesn't know what to do to help him be comfortable enough with her to get any benefit from any kind of therapy. As a side note, a starship in Star Trek universe with even one counselor for like 1,000 people on the ship, that's a wonderful idea. Wonderful idea. And that the counselor would be empathetic rather than analytic. That just seemed so natural when I was a kid watching the show every week. Her comments are nearly always about emotional experiences, almost never about intellectual experiences. You know, with the occasional plot diversion requiring a more analytic view, I guess. But all right, Barclay's nickname among the more accomplished members of the crew is Broccoli. Maybe because no one likes broccoli and he's somewhat repulsive, but even even Picard at one point slips and uses this nickname, and he's horrified himself by his use of this this nickname. I've just realized I'm on the wrong version of my notes where I don't have the rest of this written out. Let me see if I can get us all the way there. So Barclay, Picard orders LaForge. Geordi LaForge is Barclay's supervisor, and Picard orders him to engage with him, to spend time off duty with him, to include him in stuff. And Picard has this realization, much like Nathan Jessup in A Few Good Men, but in a much more functional way, right? This private can't keep up and falls out on runs and stuff, and he started to complain, and there's an incident, and he's reporting a supposed fence line shooting to get transferred out of Gitmo, and spoiler alerts for A Few Good Men, and this is why I write stuff down. The guy just under Nathan Jessup is like, well, we have to, for his own safety, you know, and for fire control, we just need to transfer this guy off the base. And then Jessup he does this whole show where they're going to surrender their position. We move this one guy out, and then we might as well just give up on democracy. It's very dramatic, whatever. And then he goes, wait, it's just occurred to me, maybe we have an obligation to train this man. Yes, I'm sure I've read that in the training manual somewhere, right? That just moving substandard performers down the road doesn't actually do anything for the Marines, and in this case it doesn't actually do anything for Starfleet. It just shuffles the problem around the uniformed services, and eventually someone's going to get hurt. And so maybe your job is not to just have the best and the brightest on the crew, but when someone's not necessarily all the way up to spec, nurture them and bring them up to spec, right? So Picard has the same idea in a much more functional sense, and he's like, hey, Geordi, he's your boy, bring him up to spec. Okay, so Geordi starts to hang out with him, and that's where he finds out about the holodeck stuff and whatever, and it's kind of gross. And grossed out, he goes to 10 forward to complain to Guinan, right? When you have a lawful order and you've resisted that lawful order as far as you legally can, you go complain to the bartender, and that's what Geordi does. He goes to complain to the bartender. But the bartender in this case is Guinan, a member of a race so wise and powerful that they never demonstrate their power, right? Even the Q Continuum is terrified of whatever race that she is. I don't remember it ever really being explained to any level of satisfaction. But wisdom ultimately is the realization that the more powerful you are, the more you're responsible to protect the agency of other beings. And so, as a consequence, this ultimately powerful race that could depose the Q if they wanted to never demonstrate any power beyond making absolutely banging cocktails, and knowing that Worf would really enjoy prune juice. A warrior's drink, you know? Okay, so Geordi's complaining, and he uses the word fit in. Right? Barclay just doesn't fit in here. And that's where Guinan uses this line. The idea of fitting in repels me. Right? The idea of fitting in repels me. There's no... Think about it, man. Think about it. Giving up your selfhood, giving up the stuff that makes you uniquely yourself, just for getting in with the in-group, with the Heathers or the Pink Ladies or the Mean Girls or whatever group, is just, it's gross. And expecting people to change their self to go along and get along is just, isn't that fascism? It's not fascism. There you go. Yeah. And so Geordi does this internal work with the help of his friend Guinan down in 10 Forward. He does this internal work and brings Reginald Barclay along. Barclay doesn't have any particular grand epiphanies in this episode. He's the same sort of nervous, almost understandably, but kind of creepy holodeck addicted dude at the end as he is at the beginning. His character arc is much longer. He's eventually the reason that the Voyager vessel makes it home, you know. Without Barclay, no Voyager success, but they include him in stuff and ask his opinion when all the brilliant people can't solve the problem. Barclay is the one having this epiphany that things that seem unrelated might be related, and that's it, That's the whole thing. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And then Barclay becomes a fan favorite, and people want him back. They see something in him, and he keeps coming back. There you go, and he gets a longer character arc. Okay, and then the last thing for today is Picard's extreme here and now orientation, and this is like 5.5 pages long. All right, but here we are. Drink some coffee. Plow ahead. Picard's extreme here and now orientation. Here we go. If I were building an existential therapy that had no roots in analysis, the here and now orientation would be the primary aspect of that therapy. The past is meaningless. That is, the self that had the experiences in the past is gone. Has been superseded by the self now that can reflect on those experiences that happened in the past. There we are. The past self did not have those experiences to reflect on, was not affected by those experiences. The current self is. At the most absolutely trivial level, you're not the person you were 5 minutes ago. You're a whole new, different person that remembers being that person and thinks that person is continuous or contiguous. That just is not the case. We're bad at remembering what happened. We weren't even there. But we're bad at remembering what happened because you're not a computer that makes a copy of a memory, a random access memory, and can operate on that and has to purposefully change the version on the hard drive. There is only the hard drive. The neural networks that encode the memory when you're remembering a memory are active, and those are impacted by experience. That's how, without that, therapy doesn't work, You have a bunch of self-serving biases and preconceptions, and people talk about the events and it changes it and whatever. So, I mean, bad stuff happened to the visitor, the therapy goer. I'm going to call the visitor because that's what my supervision clients call them. Yeah. And bad stuff happened to that person and they tell me about it. I can't change what happened. And if I could, I wouldn't. And I almost certainly shouldn't. Where do I get the moral authority to reach into the past and change it? Where do you derive that? That's a much longer conversation that's nothing to do with the ethics of time travel. Anyway, even yesterday or an hour ago took place outside of the therapy room. The visitor maybe has been telling me about their spouse all year, every session for a year. It's just complaining about their spouse's bad behavior. But I can't change that other person. They're not here. I can't change them. And if I could, I wouldn't. There we go. We are here. You and me right now, here together in the therapy room. Let's talk about that. Captain Picard is thrust into this space several times. Consider The Inner Light and Insurrection. Before we can talk about The Inner Light, we have to talk about a sci-fi story I read in an anthology sometime in the mid-1980s, probably between 84 and 87. I swore up and down for years that Harlan Ellison was the author on this, but I've never seen it again. I can't track down the author. It was in this hardcover book I don't even remember the name of. The greatest sci-fi stories from whatever year it was. I don't know. Anyway, there's an astronaut in space. They're in free fall. Their ship is destroyed. Their orbit is decaying. They're low enough that they've got a little atmospheric drag. And they're trying desperately to survive long enough to be rescued. So they have like an hour of air in their tank or something. They have a bow and a quiver of arrows that they improvised from the wreckage of the ship. And they're out there, and every minute they fire an arrow. They're going this way, but facing this way, and they fire an arrow this way because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and they're just trying to keep the orbit up. How orbits work? I was in space. I was in Space Command before I was in the Space Force in the closing days of the last century. Anyway, it makes sci-fi hard because if you understand science, it's harder to suspend disbelief. Anyway, how orbit works is planet, you're falling toward the planet at a particular speed. But if you move that way as fast as you move that way, then you don't get any closer to the planet. But this direction's not a line, it's a curve. And then you're here and you're falling this way, but as long as you go this way as fast as you go this way, instead you go like this, and that forms a circle around the thing that makes the orbit. And this guy's shooting the arrows trying to keep going this way as fast as he's going this way. There we go. And in their mind, the point of the story, in their mind, they relive their whole life. They start with the first memory they can recall, and they immerse in that memory, and they relive their entire existence in their head, and maybe they're 35 or something, and in the hour they have left, they recall the 35 years they experienced, and so functionally they've expanded their life by 35 years minus that hour. And eventually they're found suffocated and frozen, not rescued, but they had that whole other lifetime of experience. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I imagined the whole story. Because whoever the author was, they never sued Star Trek, to my knowledge, for the episode The Inner Light. In this episode, Enterprise encounters a probe from a dead civilization. That probe fires a beam onto the bridge where it intersects with Picard and causes him to recall a life on the dead world that sent out this probe. They've preserved the people, the culture, have preserved themselves in this artifact, sending knowledge of that culture and people into the minds of others, of travelers. So Picard awakens on their home world as a guy called Kamen. And Kamen is a scientist studying their star, which is set to inevitably go supernova and wipe everyone out. So he lives 40 years on this planet. He lives 40 years. He raises children, he knows grandchildren, he has a spouse and love and makes dinner and goes on walks and argues with town folk and stuff. 40 years of experience. As far as objectivity is concerned, he's unconscious on the bridge for 25 minutes. This is incredibly poignant for Picard. Here's a man who sacrificed family life for service to Starfleet. We've seen him choose service over love and family many times. He says it explicitly. This is a choice he's made that sometimes he regrets, but is ultimately satisfied with. He'd make the same choice despite the cost. I mean, existentially, that's a level of decisionality I would love if my visitors eventually demonstrated. He might have been an archaeologist. His old professor comes to the ship at one point and tries with partial success to lure him out of Starfleet and back into archaeology. And here's archaeology come back to him, not on some dry dig on a dead world, but with immersion in the life and the culture and the history and the subjective experiences of long dead people lived out loud. The probe vessel contains artifacts from that culture, including a flute. The flute is iconic in Star Trek lore now. The flute he plays all through the episode when he is Kamen, and Man, I've forgotten the tune that he plays. But if someone whistled it, I go, aha, Star Trek, right? It becomes Picard's most treasured possession. It reminds him of the life that he was granted, the alternate history of being a family man, a scientist, and this archaeologist. It's an immortality of a sort. Okay, that's the inner light. Later in Insurrection, the Enterprise watch a people called the Baku, who they assume to be a pre-warp culture because they live very simply. Later, it's revealed that they traveled to their current world and abandoned space travel. As their leader, Anij, says, "Where can warp drive take us except away from here?" That's heavy. I could stop here, but I'm not going to. Anij and Picard talk about time. Consider this conversation from the film. Anij, have you ever experienced a perfect moment in time? Picard, perfect moment? Anij, when time seemed to stop, and you could almost live in that moment. Seeing my home planet from space for the first time. Yes, exactly. Nothing more complicated than perception. We've discovered that a single moment in time can be a universe in itself, full of powerful forces. Most people aren't aware enough of the now to even notice. She demonstrates this, causing time to stand still around them. Picard experiences a single moment in time as a choice, as a decision to be aware. Later, trapped in a cave with the injured Anij, knowing a rescue team needs more time to find them and she will not survive that duration, Picard summons up that moment. Like Sean Connery in Highlander 2. Film never should have been made. Yeah. Anyway, Picard summons up that moment. He locks them together in a single instant. A painful instant. A moment that sucks. She's in pain. And he has empathy and fear for her. And they stay together. They hang out together in this one painful moment. And something changes. I mean, what changes is the rescue team breaks through the walls. A subjective moment later, objectively hours later. That doesn't happen in therapy, you know. The rescue team doesn't break through the walls. But we stay together in that moment until something changes. Picard suffers the most when he dwells on the past. In Tapestry, Q lets Picard change his impetuous decision to fight a Nausicaan as a young man. Is it an hallucination? Is it a dream he has under sedation? Is it actually Q? Memory says we're never actually granted that knowledge. Don't know, that's up to interpretation. But anyway, the Nausicaan stabs Picard in the heart in a bar fight over a space pool game, you know? Picard relives that moment, ultimately backing down and making a mature decision where he ends up not fighting the Nausicaan, not getting stabbed in the heart, but then he's relegated to a personal hell in a blue uniform as a scientist in astrometrics with like 1.5 pips on his collar instead of the 4 captain's pips. And he just wishes for his real life back. Suddenly, he has real regrets, right? Previously, when he's talked about the past, he said, you know, I could wish that I had love and a family and children and some and some familial legacy, but I'm satisfied with the choices that I made. And now, that's not regrets. When you would make the same choice again, that's not a real regret. And now he has a real regret. I should have let that dude kill me, because it made me who I am. We're kind of back to Cybok, right? After being assimilated by the Borg and saved by his crew, Picard goes to the family farm to recover. He has an offer to leave Starfleet and do oceanography instead, a new possible future. His nephew wants to follow him into Starfleet when he's old enough. More future talk. Picard talks with his brother about choices, tries not to feel his own feelings, and those feelings are a lot. They're a lot. It's an existential shattering. It's the knowledge of total helplessness that he's lived his entire life ignoring. Shatner never had this. Kirk never had this breakthrough. Kirk cheated on the Kobayashi Maru, and it's a trope in Star Trek that no good captain plays the scenario through in good faith and faces death. His brother needles him and needles him. He knows what he's doing. Until Picard, emotionally frail already, limited in frontal lobe bandwidth, eventually smacks him in the mouth, right? And they wrestle in the mud. Dignity's abandoned. Pretense is lost. They come up laughing joyously at experiencing a stupid moment. And finally, Picard can have his real feelings. Stop pretending. Stop living in the past or the future. Feel right now the shame, the powerlessness, the existential terror. Make a decision. Make a decision. All dogs are good dogs. All children are good children. What dogs and children lack is agency. If you see a bad child or a bad dog, their environment is to blame. They are blameless. You're not a dog. You're not a child. If you're a child, turn this shit off immediately. You should not be watching the Black Pill. Okay. The difference between you and a dog ultimately is the dog cannot choose how to be affected by its experiences. And a human being, under particular circumstances, can. But you have to be real about your experiences to do that. I almost did a bit about Picard being an empathy engine. And that's where I started with my scripting. I started with Picard as an empathy engine. Kirk solves his problems by being more logical or more passionate than whoever is the opponent of the week. Okay? Taking principled stands and stuff. Picard solves his problems by understanding the opponent of the week. He doesn't really have, until the Borg, he doesn't really have any enemies in the universe. Opponents, people, things that stand in the way of where he's trying to get to. But he solves his problems by understanding them, making an arrangement. But I couldn't justify it. That was an intuition. I still believe that intuition, but I couldn't find enough concrete examples of that really happening. The one that I was going to play with, in retrospect, kind of grosses me out. The one where Famke Janssen is a woman programmed to like do whatever the man in her life would appreciate. I couldn't talk about that anyway. But I think this is better. Picard is the ultimate here and now orientation. I think it's better because this is how therapy works. We stay in a moment. We stay in a painful moment. Staying there enables a decision. Our life isn't made of time. Our life is made of memories, and we can choose, in narrow circumstances, we can choose how to be affected by those memories, whether to engage with each moment. And that's it. Thank you for engaging in this collection of moments with me here today. And, okay, bye.